Dr. Naylor here with just a short video. I'm going to keep it short on purpose. If you want the physiology behind some of the stuff I'm saying, check out my other videos. But I want to talk about rest period. I'll be honest with you, I've seen these studies. I think it's probably been immersed in this world of strength conditioning and weight training for so long. I'm like, I was kind of disinterested in the rest period stuff, but then I realized I actually am interested in it because of all the videos I do on cluster set training and rest distribution and all this other stuff. So what is optimal rest range? Like between set to rest interval, okay? Rest interval. We'll just call it rest interval. It's usually called in research literature. And the answer is, of course, it depends. What are you doing? What kind of exercise? Who are you? So let me just give you some quick breakdown of some ranges. If strength is the focus, that means load is king. That means you want to preserve load. And so longer rest periods are going to be better. So 3 to 5 minutes is a great recovery. If you are less trained, so if you didn't do a lot of work capacity before you got to the heavy stuff, for the sets of 5, whatever it is, you probably will require longer rest periods. If you're a bigger person, have more type 2 fibers, you're going to require more rest. Okay. If you're doing sets of 5 as opposed to singles, you're going to require more rest. Okay. It may seem a little counterintuitive, like wasn't the heavy ones, but no, you will recover faster from the singles, especially with lower body training than you will from like your longer rep set, right? So if you do a good set of 5, 1 to fail, 2 to fail, that's going to take a lot out of you. So rest. If strength is the goal and you don't want to bleed load, rest more. When it comes to pressing, rest even more. So in other words, bench press, overhead press, and if strength is the goal here, you want to probably at least 3 minutes, but you probably push up even higher, even if you recover fairly well, just because there's less muscle mass and that muscle mass gets exhausted a lot easier when you're doing pressing exercise. So don't be discouraged in the bench press. If you go a little too fast and you're bleeding off load really fast, you're like, what the heck, as compared to the squat. There's a lot more muscle mass to work with the squat, for example, than you would have with the bench press. When it goes, it goes. And there's not a lot of reserve there, if you want to think of it that way. You can look at my videos on size principle motor recruitment for more on that. So reps are king, more rest. A bigger person, have more muscle mass, probably going to require more rest. Less work capacity built into your program before you, we're going to require more rest. Okay. If you start moving higher up in volume per set, more rest. All right. On the other side, what about if you're bodybuilding hypertrophy training? Yeah, the conventional thought always was, if you look in your books, is 30-second rest to 1 minute rest, keep it moving, a lot of sets to failure, a lot of pain and misery. The reality is that's not accurate, okay? At least not across all exercises. So here we have to look at exercise selection a little bit and say, okay, single joint exercise like your biceps curl, you might be able to get away with a little bit lower rest, bigger pump, more closer to fail. If you're looking at compound movements, again, like say the squat, and you're using for means of hypertrophy, sets of 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, you want to make sure you have adequate rest in order to not lose the reps. So volume is king here. Don't lose the reps. Now, you could say, well, I'm just shaving load then. I'll just keep doing a strip off method where I take the load off the bar every set, like an Oxford type of thing. Well, here's the problem. You still want to maintain as much the load as possible. Now, just because volume is king when it comes to building hypertrophy doesn't mean load has no significance. It's just the same way that strength, the load is king, but it doesn't mean volume doesn't have significance. So if you did 4 sets of 4 singles, you're not going to get as strong as if you did 3 sets of 5. I'm talking about strength here. Hypertrophy-wise, same thing. You want to maintain as much the load as possible. You don't want to shave anything, reps and load, certainly not reps. And so extending the rest period even here up to at least 2 minutes as a minimum, I would highly recommend. Don't go so fast that you turn into endurance training. Okay. So, if you're doing your back squat set, make sure you get at least 2 minutes rest. If you find you're shaving load quickly, more rest is required. Okay. Less rest does not mean less hypertrophy. All right. Less rest, in fact, can mean more fatigue, which can mask, which can deter more gains because you're losing reps as a result of that increase in fatigue. Compound movements increase fatigue faster. Now, I mentioned like biceps curls a minute ago. Okay. If you go a little bit faster, maybe these are secondary exercises to you as well, and you get a massive pump and you're bleeding off load in order to get these in, fine. That's not as big of a deal because the fatigue issue is not as big of a problem. Those muscles will recover faster. Certainly maintaining the load would be a good idea to maintain that tension over the same amount of volume. But I'm thinking more in terms of a practical sense here. If you have to lose load in these particular exercises like laterals and things like that in order to get the volume in, do it. And you might get something like lateral raises that require so much volume that losing some load is inevitable, right? And I think exercise rotation there can be helpful too. Instead of doing 10 sets of the same exercise, do 5 sets of one exercise, 5 of a different lateral type of exercise. Okay. So when it comes to volume, to kind of summarize what I'm blabbing on about here is maintain a rest period that still is adequate, certainly to maintain the volume. Okay. Don't sacrifice volume at anything. But can maintain the load as close to the original load as possible. Okay, and I know you can talk about doing ascending pyramids and all that stuff, but when it comes to volume training, I would start with the load that you want to use, more flat sets. When it comes to strength training, a pyramid might be helpful, load pyramid. So, you do a set of 5 at 75%, next set at 80, next set at 85% in order to get that exposure to the amount of volume that you need with a heavy enough load to trigger strength without smashing against the rock. So doing 3 sets of 5 of 85% is going to be a little bit harder, right? It's more probably going to be like 80%. So again, you can probably hear me blabbing on and on. I know I'm talking really fast. Somebody commented I talk too fast. That's accurate. Is maintain quality. Okay, maintain quality. Whether it's strength or hypertrophy, maintain quality with an eye on what is king. Is load king? Strength is your focus. Okay, if volume is king, hypertrophy is your focus. Don't sacrifice those at all, but don't think just because you're doing hypertrophy training, you need to hurry between sets in order to get these massive pump that you can hardly even close your grip anymore because your forearms are so swollen. Okay, that's not necessary in order to see hypertrophy gains. Okay, at least it's not the main driver of hypertrophy. It might be helpful to some small percentage. I couldn't give you an exact number, like again, building your biceps. But if you're not getting volume in, those biceps are not going to grow, no matter what kind of pump you're getting from one awesome set. Okay, so volume builds, right? Volume kills. We need to make sure volume builds. How do you do that? Make sure you have adequate rest. All right, hopefully that was helpful. I know it was a lot of ramble in this video, but I see a lot of stuff in rest period. I thought I'd just comment on it. That common mistake of going too fast with hypertrophy training, supers and the like, where it's just like a big, density training session, a vomit session, massive pump. But in the meantime, you're bleeding load so fast that by the time you get to the end of that super or whatever it is, you've lost 50%, 60% of the original load. Maintain quality still when you're doing hypertrophy training. All right, still maintain quality. You can do a finisher set at the end or something like that to get the pump or whatever, especially the small muscle groups. Don't do it with the squat. Don't do it with deadlift. Don't do it with those type of exercises that are multiple joint because the fatigue is so high. But certainly you could work those in, the one or last 2 sets. Laterals, you probably go to failure almost every time. But, otherwise, make sure you're maintaining that quality. Okay, hopefully I didn't say anything too, counterintuitive or anything that contradicts any. I tend to contradict myself at times when I'm talking really fast. I'm trying to make this a short, but a short for me is like 7:30 instead of 15 minutes. So we'll call it a win. All right, I'll check you in the next video. Well, I won't check anything. I'm not that kind of doctor, but I'll see you in the next video.